Albin. I'm the host and the founder of the Jazz Confusion
My
Power
name
Hour.
is Dion Parson, and I'm honored to share my passion of music with you, our listening audience, through my cultural heritage.
Things can change for you too. If you want to be brand new, that is absolutely possible.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Jazz Confusion Power Hour 2025. I'm your host, Mel Albin, and the founder of the Power Hour. The Power Hour I designed so that we would be able to feature some of the best artists in jazz, R&B, and soul. And so you get to know the artist and their music. You not only get to hear their story, but how the artist goes about their business of producing the music that you love so much. You get to hear their story, and also you get to know more about what they do backstage. What do they do in the music studio? How do they prepare for a concert? And how do they develop their career in an age when the music industry is evolving so quickly every day? So we can take you backstage into the mind and the daily life of the artists. And the Power Hour broadcasts weekly on the Source TV radio network, and we're live and streaming 4K, and the only station I know of that broadcasts in Dolby True HD. Source Radio is a nonprofit 501c3 radio station. We support jazz and also Black minority micro businesses so that they can build scale and they can get on the finance industry radar, and ultimately to create and to increase the generational transfer of wealth, assisting both families and the community with equality and equity. We depend on listener contributions, listeners like yourself, the artists who appear on the shows for mutual support, and also sponsors to cover the cost of our broadcasting. So any donation that you make to Source keeps jazz alive and well. Your donations are greatly appreciated, and remember, they're always tax deductible. Let me tell you a little about the Power Hour for those of you that are new to the station. The Power Hour has had over 125 amazing artists, well known and becoming well known, both musicians and vocalists, and occasionally we have on booking agents and managers to also share with you some of the insights of how the music industry functions. The Power Hour guests have included Eric Roberson, Mesa, Brian Culbertson, Paul Brown, Raheem Devon, Reagan Whiteside, Alex Harris, Greg Adams, Tom Brown, Costella, Eric Darius, Pieces of a Dream, Kamasi Washington, Kiko Matsui, Kim Scott, Sheryl Crow, Billy Ocean, Annie Lennox, Dwele, Marie Antoinette, Jay Brown, Miss Monet, Yulia, Frank Aaron, Terry Wollman, Her, Selena Johnson, Erin Stevenson, Mavis Swan Poole, Cecily, the late Bobby Caldwell, Jeff Bradshaw, Dion Parson, Tammy McCann, and Jeff Beck and Eric Burden. And we've had many others besides them. I want to give you just a flavor of the kinds of artists we've had on that are very diverse and very talented. Tonight is no exception. Tonight we have a singer-songwriter, a guitarist, and studio engineer, and a producer. He's established himself as a first call session singer upon graduation from the prestigious studio jazz program at the University of Miami in 1991. He sang background vocals for more than 60 Latin recordings, many winning Grammys. He has worked with countless legends in the industry, including Bill Withers, Herbie Hancock, Sting, Terrence Blanchard, and Diane Reeves, to name several. He received 2 Grammy nominations back-to-back in 2017 and 2018 for his albums Badass Blind and If You Really Want in the Best Jazz Vocal category. He also produced those records on his own label, and in his own home studio, he created all the vocals. So I want you to please welcome tonight's special guest, Raul Midon, to the Power Hour. Welcome, Raul.
Hello.
So how are you tonight?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
It's a pleasure to have you here. I'm so delighted. I've followed your career for some time now, and I've wanted to have you on the show. And I'm glad we finally were able to arrange it. And thank you for taking the time out to share your music with everybody tonight.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start off right away. It's 2025. So let's start off by you telling everybody what's cooking. What's going on in 2025, new releases, performances, what's on the table?
Well, I released an album in, I guess, mid 2024. So I'm touring that at the moment. And in February and March, I'm going to be doing the US. And then in April and May, I'm going to be doing the Europe portion of it. We've done this album on my own label, our own label. It's called Recondite Records. And we've actually also, for the first time ever, we have vinyl. We created vinyl, and I'm absolutely flabbergasted at how much people want vinyl. I grew up with records, and when CDs came out, I thought, that's it. Never again will I mess around with trying to put the needle on the record and find the track and all that. But boy, I'll tell you, vinyl has come back with a vengeance.
Well,
So, we did that, and I'm really glad because we're selling a lot of them. So,
Well, vinyl's the fastest growing form of music today. The fastest forming platform. Yeah.
It's interesting how people want to get back to, and it's really interesting how young people are getting into vinyl, because it's one thing, there's a nostalgic aspect to it for us that grew up with it, but the people that, the couple of generations, mostly have experienced CDs and streaming.
Yeah, but I think, Raul, the softness of having vinyl, which is acoustic versus digital, the sound is just much more in depth. The tonal quality is
It's
really
interesting
far
that you
superior.
say that, because I would have vehemently argued that until a few months ago when I actually went to a vinyl conference. I will say this. If you're on a super tight budget, a CD is going to sound better than a vinyl record. If you're willing to spend a little bit of money and take care of the record and buy a good turntable, then
Right.
now you're talking about something that does, in some ways, perhaps, and I'm still, but well, of course, I got to listen to some like crazy, $20,000 turntables at the vinyl conference.
But you're talking about vinyl versus CD. I'm talking about vinyl versus streaming, for example.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
It's like
that's
night and day.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about a compressed file. So,
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
That's what it is. And then, of course, there's the whole other aspect, which is that you don't have any sort of physical,
Yes.
representation, something that you can hold in your hand.
Yeah.
Music exists as energy. Really, that's it. That's what it is. And we have symbols that represent music, and we have discs that, and that's what I think people are craving.
Yeah. Book sales are still doing very well, in spite of the fact that you can get books read to you online. You don't have to read it yourself, or you can read it online. You can get online copies, but people want to hold the physical book in their hand.
But I have to say the other side of it is, Audible is for a blind person. Audible is a
sure
thing, because
sure.
you can almost any book you can get it. The readers some of them are spectacular.
Yes, they are.
I have Ann Patchett's latest book, and it's being read by oh my goodness, very famous actress, and her name is escaping me at the moment.
Okay.
But Ian McKellen reading the Iliad and the Odyssey. I mean, it doesn't get better than that. That's a Shakespearean actor.
I get Audible also, but I'm talking about having something physically in your hands. It's just a different, and the way in which you look at the pages and turn the pages, it's a totally different experience.
Absolutely. And also,
Yeah.
you are creating the whole thing in your mind when you're reading a book.
Yes.
There's
Yes.
nobody, you're making up the
Yeah.
characters, you're
Yeah.
creating the
Yeah.
voices, you're making the pictures.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
So, I'm glad you have vinyl out there, and I'm glad it's selling well. I'm not surprised at all.
Yeah, it's amazing. I would not have, I have to give my wife credit for that. I was like, oh, come on. We're going to spend all that money to make vinyl. And I'm glad we did.
Well, also, the jacket cover is something, people
Of
want to
course.
see, and you can autograph it. It's just a whole different thing. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about how you became a musician? Let's maybe tell a little bit about your family. Was there music in your household when you were a kid? Where were you raised? Was the culture surrounding you? Did it give you any insights into the kind of music that you want to perform? So why don't you tell people about some of that?
So I was raised, I was born in New Mexico in a very, very small town. My dad is from Argentina, and he moved there. And in our house, it was an extremely artistic and musical house. My dad was a dancer,
Oh,
and we would, you know, even back then, because we lived out in the sticks, there was no cable TV, there was no cell phones. Even radio was kind of slim pickings because we were so far out in the sticks. But of course, that's a whole other thing. That got us into, I'm very much into radio. I'm a ham radio operator. So that we ended up hanging out on the roof for hours looking for the best signal for the jazz station, which was KUNM in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which is about 120 miles from where we lived. And because they have their antennas up on a mountain, it was possible to hear them, even though we were in a valley. But I grew up with bongo drums and conga drums, and my father owned a restaurant which featured flamenco for 3 months out of the summer, 2 shows a night. And so I was hanging out hanging out with the flamenco musicians. I started getting guitar lessons when I was 6 years old with a flamenco teacher. One of the things we would do for hours and hours and hours is just play conga drums. My dad and I, not to a record, not to anything, just play rhythms for hours and hours, and they would evolve. It's one of the things that I credit with really getting me into music and how you could create. We didn't copy anybody. We just played, and it would go on for hours and hours. So that was some of the first. And then I had a guitar, tiny little guitar, and I started taking lessons. And I went a bunch of years without any lessons after my initial, being it. But I learned from people. I would always learn from anybody that played guitar. They would teach me a chord here and there and so forth. But I wasn't necessarily as involved as I would have been if I lived in, New York or Philly or someplace. I was in the middle of nowhere, so I had to learn where I could.
What about public school? Did you have any music in public school?
Well, I went to a blind school
Okay.
from the age of 5 to, I guess, pretty much high school. It was a boarding school, so I was not home a lot of the time. I was, at this boarding school, and there was a music program, but nothing like the guys that would go to art school or anything. It was, we had a choir, but all the sort of, I didn't have any formal training while I was going there. There was nobody, and I guess, it is what it is. I mean, I always think people that grow up in a musical family, someone like Gerald Clayton or somebody like that, who grew up with a a dad who's like playing all the time at a high level. And, you know, when you grow up in a situation like that and you show an interest in music, you get the hardcore, I would imagine you get the hardcore lessons, you know.
Sure, like Layla Hathaway
Oh yeah, like
or,
Layla,
or,
exactly.
you know, Kayla Waters, you know.
Yeah, I mean, all these people that grew up in I had a musical family, but not in a,
Right.
my dad was not in show business in that sense, you know. He was a dancer, but once he had the kids, you know, he gave that up. So we were not in show business per se.
So how did you get to the University of Miami? I mean, you didn't have any musical training. You know, tell me a little bit about that.
Well, okay, so in high school, I started taking lessons with a classical guitarist, a teacher in New Mexico, and so I started to get some, but still not really theoretical training. But I was just so into it, and by that time I was listening to Chick Corea and Miles and Train, and I was passionate about this music, and so we started looking at schools, and there were 3 schools that we looked at. It was University of Miami, it was North Texas, and it was Berkeley College of Music at Boston. And basically, Miami was the one that answered first and that showed a lot of interest. That's why I went there. I could have easily gone to Berkeley or North Texas. But
Yeah, North
the
Texas has a
reason we
great
looked
program
at those
too.
schools is because
Yeah.
they had a jazz program.
Yeah,
And that's what I
exactly.
wanted.
Wonderful. So did you know, when you got to Berkeley, I mean, when you got to University of Miami, um, were you prepared for the kind of rigor that they would be
I was
putting you through?
prepared, but I wasn't anywhere near as far along as the people who had gone to like Interlochen. You know, there's all
Yeah.
these places where people get heavy theory before they ever get to college. So the only thing that I had done rigorously was study classical guitar, which was not really what I wanted to do, but those are the teachers that I had. And I had some repertoire, some classical repertoire. So, you know, I said what I wanted to do. Said, listen, you're going to be in the classical guitar program for a year, and it's up to you. Here's a guy you can take private lessons. You're going to have to pay for them yourself. But after this was a graduate, somebody who had graduated in the jazz guitar program, so he knew what it is that I needed to learn in order to get into the jazz program. So I was in the classical program for a year, and of course, they all knew what I wanted to do. And at the end of the year, I was taken into the office of the classical teachers, and they begged me to stay in the program. They said, you know, you're really good at this. We think, you know, you, and I was like, no, I want to do jazz. So I auditioned and I got into the jazz. The jazz guitar program at UM was very small compared to Berkeley. You know, they had like 800 guitar players or something. We had like, I don't know, 10 or 12.
Oh, gee, that is small.
Super small. Yeah. And, you know, there was one teacher and one grad assistant teaching, and that's it, as far as I know. So it was very hard to get into, let's say.
Well, you know, being in an environment like that, what kind of visual challenges were you presented with for composing, arranging? You know,
I mean, it was the first visual challenge I was presented with was getting around the school.
Right.
You know, that was for whatever reason, I lived across the campus. I didn't live in the dorm closest to the music school. I lived in the dorm all the way across the campus. So I had to learn how to get to my classes. That was the first challenge. And then, of course, you know, there was the challenge of, you know, teachers are used to teaching on, you know, by writing on the board. You know, I remember being in theory and them talking, you know, 4-part writing and this and that. And, oh, my God, and I was completely lost. Completely.
Yeah.
And I had friends that would help me. A very good friend of mine, who I'm very much still in touch with, created a board with holes in it and with thumbtacks that I could sort of figure out, because we started out learning 4-part writing, and 4-part writing in the style of Bach. So there were all these rules, no chromaticism, and and there was all of this, and then I remember very clearly, we were studying what they call augmented 6 chords in classical music, which basically amounts to a dominant chord. But the way the difference was the resolution and the way they were written. Because as classical music became more and more chromatic, they had to figure out ways to break rules that were, in the past were rules. And so they came up with this French augmented 6, Italian augmented 6, and German augmented 6. And I remember leaving the class and going to my ear training class with a teacher, a guy named Don Kaufman. And I was like, I don't get this. I don't get why. I don't get this French augmented, Italian augmented. I don't get this crap at all. I don't understand it. And he says, well, let me just play it for you. So he went to the piano. He said, this is the French augmented. This is the approach, and this is how it resolves. And here's the Italian, and here is the German. And I got it. Immediately made sense to me when he played it. So that was.
Good. So you actually. Go ahead.
Yeah, so that was, and of course, the challenge of learning guitar, from a teacher. I learned this later, that my guitar teacher, who was very good, Rondel Dallahan was his name, used to close his eyes to figure out how to teach me, what it was like.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
Yeah, to play. To do jumps on the guitar and
That's cool.
Learn all this stuff. And, it was, at the beginning, he had to tell me, here, these are the fingerings, here are the chord scales. These are the fingerings, so you put your, for a C7, you go to the 3rd fret and you put your first finger on the 5th string, 3rd fret, and blah, 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 that sort of thing. So.
In retrospect, the fact that you went to a school that had such a small student body in the program was really beneficial for you.
Completely, because it took some extra effort and extra time for the teachers to teach me, because I didn't learn in the same way as other people, and they took the time to do it. So I'm very grateful for that.
Wonderful. While I know you became a very sought after session player. Right after you graduated, did you make contacts in the music industry while you were a student there, or how did you become a session player?
The session situation had everything to do with me going to the University of Miami, everything, because all the singers that were doing sessions when I was called, and I was called to replace somebody that they didn't like, actually, but it was all the singers were former students of the University of Miami. So that was, I tell people that they talk about, I don't need to go to college, I can learn from. Well, the connections
No. Yeah, exactly.
Were just, crucial. At least
no, it's like when you're talking. Yeah, you're talking about North Texas and Berkeley. You go to Berkeley, you're connected to everybody forever.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
and, there was in the 90s, there was a pretty big session scene in Miami because of this quote unquote Latin craze, and all the, so a lot of English artists were coming down to Miami and recording Spanish versions of their songs, And, so that was a lot of work. I mean, between 1991 and I would say 2001, it was constant. And then things really, really dried up really quickly. But
Well, we're going to talk about that when we get to the 21st century a little later. But right now, I want to play one of your first songs for the evening for people so they can get an idea of your music. I want to play your most recent release, Lost and Found. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about the background for this song?
you're playing which song? I'm sorry, Lost and
Lost and Found.
Yeah, so this is kind of a strange thing. Lost and Found is the only song on there that I wrote a long time ago. It's not a new song. And I wrote it completely inspired by Bob Dylan. And it was particularly a town hall recording, live at town hall, that Bob Dylan did. And he read a poem called Last Thoughts on Woody Guthrie.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really getting into songwriting at that time. And I was mesmerized by the image, the kaleidoscopic nature of the imagery in this poem. He never sang. This is not a song. It was a poem that he read. And that inspired this song. So the whole rhythm of it, at least to me, is sort of Dylan-esque. More is better, they say. Where'd you learn to think that way? When it comes to satisfaction, you got to pay, and pay. There's a crazy notion going round like an urgent whisper in a small town, and this old clock keeps winding down, and you can reach me in the lost and found. It's like, like total, at least to me anyway, total Dylan-esque.
Well, Dylan, obviously Dylan is described as a poet laureate as well as everything else. His lyrics are poetic and also such great stories.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. So let me play Lost and Found for everybody, and then we'll talk some more. Okay.
Yep.
Better, they say. Where'd you learn to think that way? When it comes to satisfaction, you got to pay and pay. There's a crazy notion going around like an urgent whisper in a small town. This old clock keeps winding down. You can reach me in the lost and found. Now when you wander down every street, my friend, and you knock on every door, and when your head starts slipping and you can't hold on no more, when this constant war has got you down, you can reach me here in Lost and Found. Forever, they say, even in our modern day. Yeah. Scratch my head, what's the attraction? It's a game you got to play and play. Now when you wander down every street, my friend, and you knock on every door, and when your hands start slipping and you can't hold on no more, when this constant war has got you down, you can reach me here in Lost and Found. When this constant war has been getting you down, I'll be waiting here in Lost and Found. lost and found. When this constant woe has got you down, you can reach me here in lost and found.
Oh, that's lovely. We have some comments from some listeners. Bert Ratcher wrote, "It has a Dylan Springsteen groove. Nice."
Cool.
So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the
Dylan
interesting
Springsteen
thing
groove.
about this song is this was one of the songs that I had written when I made State of Mind way back in 2004. And for whatever reason, and, you know, they just didn't, it never got recorded. And that's why I said, well, hell, now that I'm making my own decisions, I think this is a really good song. I'm going to put it on the record. You know.
That's the great part about being independent. You know, I remember there's a story about Rod Stewart that they were finishing an album. They told him he needs one more song, and he wanted them to put Maggie May on, and they said, "Nah, that song has nothing." And he insisted that Maggie May be on there, and it became probably the biggest hit on the album. So, you know, oftentimes the artist knows best.
Well, you know, the thing is I guess my attitude is, you know, if you don't do what you want and it's not successful, I mean, if you don't do what you want and it's not successful, you're always going to wonder what would have happened if I had done what I wanted to do. And if you do what you want and it's not successful, you at least have the comfort of saying I did what I wanted to do. So
Exactly. We have another comment from Terrence DeLuca. "Love the lyrics. I'm no longer lost. I'm now found. Nice guitar solo."
yeah, that's thank you.
You know, you got some people listening in and loving your music. Let's talk a little bit about some of the background vocals that you did. You sang on more than 60 Latin recordings,
Yeah,
and many were Grammy winners. What?
A lot more than that. Hundreds.
Well, that's all I found in the research.
1991 and 2001, I mean, we were working 2 and 3 times a week.
Wow. Well, why don't you tell us about some of the ones that stand out in your mind, some of the recordings where you did some background vocals?
Well, you know, I have to say, one of the, how do I want to put this diplomatically? One of the challenges that we had doing sessions was getting paid on time or getting paid at all. It was crazy. We were doing records for Sony at the time and BMG and you know, all the major record labels, and it was like pulling teeth to get paid. You know, it was like, you know, making phone calls like, dude, what's going on? And one of the reasons was because, and I'm sorry, I'm going to get a little political here, but we were in a right-to-work state in Florida. So there was no
I used to live in Florida. I know.
And it's, you know, it's like hard to enforce stuff like that. So one of the sessions that stands out for me is I got to work on some Enrique Iglesias albums. And say what you want about Enrique, man, he paid on time, great all the time. Like the difference was just amazing. And I don't know, you know, I guess it was his team or whatever, but I sang on Hero, you know, I sang on Will You Be My Hero, Baby, you know, and it was wonderful working with him. I mean, you know, I always loved working with Luis Enrique. That was really fun. We did a lot of, you know, not music that I would listen to. Let's put it that way. But you know, every now and then you do something that was really like, wow, this is really cool. You know.
Well, you know, I you know, among the other people that were talking about Iglesias, let's talk about Shakira. How did you get on the tour with Shakira? How did that happen?
Well, I was, you know, doing sessions, and I had sung on her record. The record was called, I think, Pies Descalzos was the record that I did a lot of work on. I think I could be wrong on that. Anyway, it was a long time ago. But anyway, there was one album that I did a lot of work on, and as I said, all the people that were working with Shakira, most of them, or a lot of them, were graduates. So one of the things was, I had, in all the years that I had been in South Florida, I had never toured. I never thought about it. I was, doing so much studio work, I never even thought about going out on tour. So they, one of the singers, her name was Rita Quintero, suggested me, and they said, "Oh man, he's blind though. What's that going to be like?" And she said, "Oh, I'll take responsibility for him." So that's, she kind of got me the gig, and then I went and rehearsed, and we ended up touring all over the world. And let me tell you, want to talk about challenge. The first, I would say, 4 or 5 gigs, I was packing myself. I didn't have an assistant. I would never do this now, but I was, I was going on the plane and the buses with everybody, but I was in my own room. I was packing my own clothes, and, doing my own thing. And I can't tell you how many bottles of shampoo I left in the shower of the hotel. Like, oh, I got to get some.
At least you didn't leave Rolex watches.
Yeah, well, oh man, we had some crazy stuff happen. We had a whole rig in the Dominican Republic. Somebody took the whole sequencing rig right off the stage. Somebody turned their head and they turned back and it was gone.
Wow.
Yeah. In Argentina, we had a dude come into the dressing room and pretending that he worked for Emilio and Gloria Estefan. And while everybody was on stage, he took everybody's stuff, including their passports.
Oh my God.
And luckily, I had stopped leaving my stuff in the dressing rooms, and so I didn't get anything stolen. But people were, it was panic because you don't leave any country without a passport. So,
do you remember how many dates you had in a row with Shakira?
Oh,
how many
God.
months was it?
So 3 months. I mean, we were on tour for a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, we did a bunch of dates in Argentina. We did a bunch of dates in Colombia. We did Guatemala. We did Chile. We did, oh my God, almost everywhere in Latin America. We did not go to Brazil for some reason. I don't know why, but yeah, Uruguay, we went everywhere. And then we did Anaheim. We did the pond in Anaheim. And of course, we also did, Saturday Night Live and Rosie O'Donnell and MTV and Jay Leno and Letterman. We did all those.
Yeah, you left Shakira's band and you moved to the Big Apple. That's a big switch coming out of Miami and then moving to New York. But within a year, you debuted at Carnegie Hall with movie music of Spike Lee. How did you hook up with Spike Lee that quick?
I'll tell you. So we had moved to New York. And, as you said, it was a huge shock for so many reasons. We were living in a 1-bedroom apartment. And I grew up in the Southwest. I had never lived in a tiny apartment like that. But I had gotten this gig, kind of a residency at Joe's Pub. So I was working there at least once a month. And that was Bill Bragan, who used to run the book that place, was really, he saw me at a place, I was playing wherever I could in New York. And I have to say that I was able to coast until I could make some money because I got a pretty big publishing deal from Warner before I left Miami. That's what made me move to New York. I got a $100,000 publishing deal.
Wow.
And I got to keep 75,000 of that. So they did the other 25,000 for showcases. We spent all the money renting out BB King's, which I think was a huge mistake, but that's what we did, to do a showcase for record labels. But
Gotcha.
I moved to New York, and I was playing at Joe's Pub. And the producer of the show, the movie music of Spike Lee, came up to me backstage and said, "How would you like to play Carnegie Hall?" And I said, "Yeah, someday that would be awesome." He goes, "How about next month?" Next month, really? And I ended up playing on that show, and I was the nobody on the show. There was, Diane Reed, Angie Stone was on it.
Oh,
I think
okay.
Sandra Wilson was on
Wow.
it.
Yeah.
Dee Dee Bridgewater, Terrence, of course, Terrence Blanchard. And it was like the New York Phil, or at least players from the it was an orchestra.
Right.
And it was a show which showed footage from Spike Lee movies, and the orchestra played live, and then we played songs from the movies, from the movies.
Wow. Okay.
So I ended up playing Make Sure You're Sure, and at the suggestion, I was recording it and listening back to myself, trying to really get it polished. This was like, a big break for me, or I thought it was anyway. And so the night before I was going to do it, she said, "You should start out with the trumpet thing." It's like, really? So I went, something like that. And of course, everybody's like, "What the hell is that?" Everybody's, sort of wakes up from their stupor and turns around. It's like, "Who the hell is that?" And so they ended up writing an article about the show the next day in the New York Times. Panned it to hell. But
Oh, wow.
they said Raul Midon stole the show, So that was kind of a turning point in a sense. And then I started to, it was really weird. I ended up getting, invited or to go to record labels' offices and play live, which is totally not, usually you get the manager sends a demo tape or something.
Yeah, demo, yeah.
And that's not what I did. I ended up playing live for everybody and anybody in the major record label pantheon at that time. There were still a lot of labels.
Mm-hmm.
I played for, Ron, who's the guy? Everybody, from Clive Davis to Sylvia Rohn. I can't remember all their names, but I played, and it was kind of an interesting thing because everybody was kind of like, "Yeah, this is a really talented guy, but what is he exactly?" And I was older by then too. I wasn't 20. I was 36.
Right.
So in show business, you're like, that's ancient already. You're like, over the hill by 36 if you haven't made it by 36.
Right.
So and there was always this, "What kind of record do you want to make, Mr. Midon?" And I would, and at the beginning, I would hem and haw and, I want to combine, blah, blah, blah. Just a lot of bullshit, really. And at some point, I realized that they were asking me that because they wanted to know, they didn't know what kind of a record I should make.
Right.
So I started to answer, a record that sells.
That's the right answer.
And then I got invited to play for Bruce for Arif Mardin, which was way what I wanted to do anyway. I wanted to be on a jazzy type label.
Yeah.
I wanted to be with somebody that sort of understood where I was coming from as a songwriter, but a lover of jazz, So I played for Arif, and the last song I played was a song I wrote on State of Mind called "Everybody," and I finished playing, and he goes, Raul, hold on. Excuse me. And he walks out of the room. I'm like, what the hell? And my manager, lawyer at the time, said, well, he was smiling. I think it's good. And he brings back the whole staff of the record company. He goes, Raul, play that again. And that's how I got signed.
That's great.
To Blue Note. You know?
That's great.
Actually,
well, look,
Manhattan Records is what they call it.
You know, we could talk all night. I want to have you back on because we have so much to talk about. Let me play another song right now. We're running down on time. I want to play Ocean of Doubt.
Yeah.
So let me play the song, and then you can come back and talk about it, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, this is Ocean of Doubt by Raul Midon.
To feel your light, and why should distance be the reason that I strayed so far away from right? Maybe I don't see the differences you say exist between black and white. Maybe I just drifted away with the tide on an ocean of doubt so deep and wide. I was on your side, now I'm free. Say I live in darkness, and I guess that what they say is true. Could it be that what I see appears to be invisible to you? Maybe I don't see the world through weary eyes in quite the way you do. Maybe I just drifted away with the tide on an ocean of doubt so deep and wide. I was on your side, now I'm free.
That's a beautiful song. That's such a nice groove. You know, we have a comment from Carlos Casanessa. Love the concept. We often drift away for reasons unknown, but we're free at last.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
there's
we have another,
a lot of stuff going on in that song.
yeah, there's another comment from Teresa Selena. Reminds me of my last relationship. We just drifted away, but we're still friends 20 years later.
Yeah. That's good.
And here's another one. Carol Burns. Life is serendipitous. Love it.
Yes.
You got a lot of people listening in tonight. There are other comments too. We'll get to a little bit later in the show. But for now, you know, we're really running down on time. Um, you've worked with countless legends, Raul, and they include Bill Withers, Herbie Hancock, Sting, Terrence Blanchard, Diane Reeves, and many more. I am particularly interested in Bill Withers. I'm a Bill Withers freak. I think that he is one of the greatest songwriters ever. And I'm particularly interested in your work with Bill Withers. Can you share a bit with us about the collaboration and how what stands out about it in your mind?
So I'll start out. Bill Withers' daughter took him to see me play at the theater in Hollywood. I can't remember the name of it. So he went to see me play, and I met him there, and I talked to him a little bit, and so forth, and you know, forgot all about it. And I was in Italy. I played a show. It was late, and it was like 2 a.m, and I get a phone call from at my hotel, which was really weird to begin with, that my phone was ringing. You know, I mean, none of us use the hotel phones anymore. We just use our cell phones, right?
Right.
I mean, maybe you use the hotel phone for room service or something, but, you know, you don't. And I pick up the phone, and, Raul, it's Bill Withers, you know. I'm like, what? And I'm thinking to myself, this has got to be some kind of a joke.
Yeah, prank
right?
call, yeah.
He goes, oh, man. Oh, yeah. Hey, man, I want to write a song with you. And I'm like, at some point, I sort of began to think I could hear Bill Withers' voice the way I would imagine it would sound like if he was talking, because I had only heard him sing. I had never heard him speak.
Right.
But it sounded like Bill Withers. So I started to sort of believe it. I was like, okay, what do you want to write the song about? He goes, I want to write it in Spanish. And I was like, oh, geez. He said, I have this friend that I want to write about, that I really, we used to work with our hands together. We used to do carpenter work and build stuff together, and I want to write a song about him. And I thought, oh man, in Spanish. You know? And of course I said, sure, you know, let's do it. So I ended up in LA doing a show, and I went over to Bill Withers' house, and there was a film crew there. They were filming Still Bill, the documentary which came out, which is, we discussed off air before. And it was basically a documentary about Bill Withers and his career and his life and his thoughts and everything like that. And so, you know, he's you know, we're talking a little bit. He goes, you know, you guys can leave now, you know. And the video guys were like, oh man, come on, Bill. No, we need to get to know each other, you know, like, get out of here, you know. So he kicked all the camera people out. And so that we started to, and this is the way it went down. He would say to me, how do you say, my friend, my Cuban friend, we don't talk anymore in Spanish? And I said, mi amigo cubano, no hablamos más. He goes, put that in there. Put that in the song. And he'd say, how do you say, how are your wife and kids? I'd say in Spanish, you say, well, ¿cómo está tu esposa? ¿Cómo están tus hijos, tu esposa? He said, put that in there. Literally, I basically translated what he was telling me, and and he had this kind of 2/5 pattern, I believe, C minor to F7. That was it. That's what he had. It sounded like a Bill Withers groove, and that's. No, I'm sorry. It was G minor to C7. That was the thing he had. G minor to C7, and that's how we. And then the guys came back the next day, and it was funny because I'd written a song. I wrote 2 verses and a chorus, and I thought, okay, this is it. And he goes, "Oh man, we need another verse." I was like, "Okay, I'll come back tomorrow." He goes, "No, why don't you write it now and you let me know when you're done?" I'm like, "What?" So I'm sitting there, when you're writing,
I know,
like you're just sitting there. And I guess I went to another room, like within the house, like somewhere, like in a corner somewhere, and I just started writing, and I said, okay, here's the verse. And te extraño, te extraño, te extraño, whatever, what was it? Tú y yo no hablamos más, whatever, thing I wrote. And that was it. And they documented that. So that's in the documentary, us writing the song.
That's terrific.
And recording it.
That's terrific. Some of the music that he did, I think he has a song called "The Love That Makes Me Laugh," something like that. It's one of his lesser known songs, but it's an amazing groove. And then, of course, it's a classic, "Grandma's Hands."
I think my favorite Bill Withers ism is "Hello Like Before."
Oh, I love that.
That is truly original.
Yeah.
And it says everything in so few words. Hello like before. Somebody that you met, maybe an ex, and you're meeting them again. Well,
the song "Love That Makes Me Laugh" it's a paradox. It makes him happy and it makes him skeptical.
Yeah. He was, and we had a lot of conversations. He was very, very witty. And,
yes.
He had a lot of witticisms and a lot of things. I remember I said, "God, that's bullshit." And he goes, "Yeah, well, the bull didn't want it." Stuff like that. I mean, he was really, really witty.
Look, I love this conversation. I could do this all night. Let's play the next song because we're really almost out of time. I want to play Anything at All. So why don't you tell people a little background in that song?
So this was a song. I'm trying to work on a book about a world that I dreamed of when I was a little kid, and it was called Tembererana, and it's a world of energy beings that exist as energy and make you feel good or bad, and they're powerful. They can and this was kind of writing about that. That's why it's kind of I don't know, it's lyrically it's about this, or I was thinking about this world, about the world of dreaming and bringing those dreams into reality and trying to explain things that are somewhat incongruous to the logical mind, I guess is the way I would put it.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's listen to Anything
and it's a song
at all.
about imagination. It's a song about aspiration too. Like, hey, you want to do something? Do it. If you can imagine it, you can do it. So
that's a today in this day and age, that's an important message. So let's hear Anything at All by Raul Midon.
Guess it was meant to be. So happy to be free. images of a world gone insane. So I listen to the pictures in my brain. Oh yeah, reality lives in dreams. Everything's what it seems. Lifted by clouds of feeling and sound to the top of whatever I see. Mountains, oceans, to the shores of another world. Got this notion, you can be free when your flags unfurl, and you can do anything, anything at all. Gliding through earth and sky, beyond the wear of wine, echoes our voices that whisper through time, the wisdom of the ages gone by. Flags unfurl, and you can do anything, anything at all. Now is the way to be, that's my philosophy. The future is now, you see, I'm right here. Imagine what you can be, the eye of the mind can see. Beyond mere reality, just dream. In time we can overstand, determine the fate of man. Everyone needs a hand, I'm right here. Imagine the earth and sky, an ocean of lullabies, a magical ship that flies, just dream. Forgiveness is everything, I lift up my voice and sing. Love is a precious thing, I'm right here. Today is a special day. Here's what I have to say. Love is the only way, let's dream.
Raul, that is great song. You know, you have a lot of comments on this one. Carol Burns said, "Wow, this reminds me of a Paul Simon thing."
Yeah,
Latin,
for sure.
yeah,
For sure.
yeah. And then another comment. Love the beat. This is from Tom Paul Allen. Another person, Tina Olivia. What a happy song. and
Well,
then
you know, interesting.
one more comment.
I'm playing all the percussion, and the only other musician on that is the bass player, Richard.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm
Well,
playing
people really love the groove. And this person, Tina Olivia again said, love the jazzy guitar.
Yeah, there's an electric guitar solo and an acoustic guitar solo on
Yeah.
this song.
Yeah, we have some astute listeners. They're really paying close attention to your music.
Yeah, that's
so,
cool.
Yeah, it's
That's
really
very
nice.
cool.
It's really nice. So, I'm so sorry. I wish I could have you on for 2 hours, but we can't do it. So let's play the final track tonight, and then we'll have to close out. I want to play Wall of Indifference. So why don't you say a few words about that, and we'll play that song for everybody, because people are loving your music.
Well, this is pandemic therapy, basically. You know, it was like, you know, we were in this limbo, and there was all this stuff going on with the election and blah, 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 and the post-election and, you know, all that. And this was kind of a way to keep me from going crazy, basically.
Well, let's play Wall of Indifference, and then we close out. We'll talk a little bit more for a few more minutes. This is Raul Midon's Wall of Indifference.
A wall of indifference I've built all around me. This is the state in which you have found me. It's the way that I cope with my fast fading hope for a better time. Sunrises and sunsets with each day that passes. I toss away ribbons and rose-colored glasses. It's the way that I cope with my fast-fading hope for a better time. Born free, you and me, free to roam where we will. All is well between heaven and hell, with so many hours to kill. So here we are, so close and yet so far, searching for reason or rhyme. And I'm breaking my brain while waiting in vain for a better time. So here we are, so close and yet so far, searching for a reason or rhyme. And I'm breaking my brain while waiting in vain for a better time. A better time.
Oh, Raul, that's beautiful. Were you on the keys also? Did you do the keyboards?
No,
Okay.
I'm not that good of a piano player.
Okay,
That's
'cause the
Federico
keyboards,
Peña.
the keyboards were great.
Yeah, he plays beautiful stuff on there.
We have some more comments from some of your new fans. Alicia Tiffany, Raul, you have a unique writing style. It does remind me of the lyrics of Paul Simon. Another person is referring to Paul Simon with you. Anita Haas, you have given us all a better time tonight. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Well, Paul Simon is a huge influence. I have to admit to that. Actually, I wrote a song. I'll tell you a quick story. I opened for him in Stuttgart, in Germany, and I'm a huge fan, and I'm hanging out with the band, his band. I knew the guys from New York, the guys in his band, some of them, and I was like, oh man, God, I'd love to meet Paul Simon. He goes, yeah, well, not much of a chance of that. He's not that. He's not coming out or anything, and all of a sudden I hear a knock on the door, and there comes Paul Simon into my dressing room, and I'm like, holy crap, and they all leave. Like they don't even say bye, they just split. And I'm sitting there, and I'm pretty cool generally, but I totally fanboyed out. Oh man, oh my God, you're the national treasure, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, don't be a silly man. That's what he said. The first words he said to me were, don't be a silly man. And I was like, okay, all right. That's the end of that. And we just started talking about songs and writing, and he said, oh, I'm working on a song. Let me play it for you. Can I play your guitar, And he plays me a song, and I went home and I wrote a song called "Don't Be a Silly Man," all about Paul Simon. I played on stage, and it's totally kind of in the rhythm of the Saints. It's in 7, and it's got this kind of muffled, and I would tell people, guess who.
Inspired
this
you.
is about a very famous, and I would give them clues. Somebody that, started in the 60s. Actually, he started in the 50s.
50s, yeah. Yeah.
But,
Billy Joel tells this great story that his daughter wanted to meet Bob Dylan. So he contacted Dylan and said, yeah, come on, bring her up. And they went up to his hotel room, and Billy Joel says, here I am, Bob Dylan's standing in his kitchen, talking to my daughter. And I'm thinking, I'm here with Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, man, it's cool. Chill out, man. Just relax.
Yeah.
And Billy Joel was just saying that, sometimes when you're in the presence of people you really love, it's just hard to imagine. So I know how you. Yeah.
And in a way, he turned the conversation into something authentic by sort of confronting me right away and saying, don't be a silly man. Don't be stupid.
Yeah.
I didn't come here for you to do that. I get that shit all the time,
Yeah, exactly.
I don't need you to do this, kind of thing. That's what he was saying to me,
Yeah, but you needed to do it.
Well, I got over it really quick because I wanted to hang out with him. So I stopped. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
I get it.
Look, Raul, this has been a delightful evening, and I hope you were willing to come back again. I'm sure you'll be dropping some more music. I'd like to have you back on because there's so much we never got to discuss that I wanted to talk about more of your career. So I hope you enjoyed the evening as much as I have, and I really want to
Absolutely.
have you
I
back.
appreciate it. I appreciate the fact that you know a lot. You know, sometimes you talk to journalists and you realize they did the 5-minute Wikipedia thing.
Yeah.
One of my don't ever do this to me. One of my least favorite questions is, tell me about yourself. That's just really a compliment. It's one thing, you know. I don't mind talking about myself. I'm saying when somebody does that as their first question, you know that they don't know crap about what you're doing.
You know, I got to tell you, I put a lot of time in doing research. I don't ask artists the same questions. There's only one question I ask almost every artist I have on, and I didn't get a chance to ask you tonight. So when you come back next time, I might ask you. But you know, I think every artist is unique, and the interview should be unique. It shouldn't be repetitive. You know, so
I agree, but you know, sometimes it's not like that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Well, look, why don't you tell everybody how they can become a fan, where they can find you on social media, your website?
Oh, it's raulmidon.com, raulmidon.com. The tour dates are up there, and I'm on Facebook. You know, I guess I don't really do social media. Somebody else does that for me. I'll be straight up with that. But yeah, you can go on the website, and there's, you know, tons of stuff on YouTube and everywhere else. So.
And they can buy your music and you know, other things on your website.
Actually, you know, with the last record, it's our own label. We got our own distribution, so we are actually in record stores, the ones that still exist, independent record stores. We're at Amazon, and of course you can also get, you know, from the website. And you know, of course, it's streamable everywhere: Spotify, Amazon, blah blah blah. Right. So
wonderful. Well, look, if you want to hang around for a few minutes afterwards, maybe we can chat for a minute if you got the time. But I have to say goodnight, and Raul, thank you again. It's been a delightful evening.
Thank you.
Take care of yourself. Well, that was a wonderful evening. It was just absolutely spectacular. We have another great artist for you next week, Sarah's Girl. You're going to love this vocalist, this artist. She's just wonderful, classic R&B. So be sure to tune in next week again, and we'll bring you another edition of the Jazz Confusion Power Hour. Have a nice evening. I'm Albin. I'm the host and the founder of the Jazz Confusion Power Hour.
My name is Dion Parson, and I'm honored to share my passion of music with you, our listening audience, through my cultural heritage.
Things can change for you too. If you want to be brand new, that is absolutely possible.